Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. So inshallah today we're moving on to propositions. So we had an introduction, what mantiq's all about. Then we went on to terms, went through definitions, and then last time we went through definitions, second one. Now we're moving on to the first unit of second unit. So we have terms, definitions. Now we're moving on to proposition, proposition, not preposition. Preposition is nahwa, harfun jar, or adverbs. So proposition. What's a proposition? A statement, a sentence. So let's have a few things to analyze about a proposition. So all my sons are, say it loudly, lazy. Good. All my sons are lazy. This is a proposition, isn't it? Yeah? It's a statement. Okay. Now, what are we talking about in here? The sun. So this is called the subject. And what's the predicate and the khabar in lazy? So, but we have two more words which are important. What are two more words? The all and the are. So the are we know from Arabic, it's called the copula, or in English you call it the auxiliary verb. But in mantiq we call it a copula, meaning the thing that joins the two together. That doesn't really play much of a part later going forward. But the other part that plays the main thing here is a quantifier. Meaning, are we talking about something all or a part? So subject and predicate is easy. The copula is not really going to play much of a part in mantiq. That's a grammatical function really. The main thing that plays a function is a quantifier. Is this statement talking about everything or some things of that category? Yes? So the main thing is subject, predicate and the quantifier. You following? Okay? Yes? Okay. G. In Arabic you call this, in Arabic mantiq you call this mawdu', which means what? The topic. This is called the mahmul. What's it called? The mahmul. And it's called the sur. In a surah mean what? Really, surul balad is called what? The walls around the village, around the city, the citadels. So the surah is called a surah because kind of encompassed. So it's called a sur, meaning that which encompasses the subject. It gives it, it restricts it, or it confines it, and it tells you what it's about. Okay, so these are the three main things that we need to remember. So far so good? So we have the subject, the predicate, and the copula, which is our kind of, but the more important thing is the quantifier. Is this what we're talking about? Now once we understand the parts of a sentence, or parts of a proposition, what we need to understand that there are 5 different aspects to a proposition. One is the value. Value, we'll go through each one here. Value, quality, quantity, distribution, and mode. The first 2 are quite easy. The second 2 are also easy, but they need a bit of explanation. Yes? So what's value? All my sons are lazy. Is this true or not? False. We all know it's true. But it can also be what? False. So it can be true or it can be false. This is the value. Now, what mantiq can do to you, what mantiq can do for you, is like a data. So mantiq is basically like an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever data you put in, it can work with that data. It can't verify the data. It can't say whether it's true or false. That's not Excel's job. Are you following me? What it can say is, if you say, for example, one book costs £5 and 2, so we sold 5 books, so therefore 5 times 5, £25. If you only sold 4 books at £4, but you put the wrong data in. So the true and false of a proposition is not, mantiq can't do anything with that. Mantiq can just tell you, well, give us true propositions and then we can work with those. Do you understand? So whether a proposition is true or false, that's not mantiq's job. That's the science job. So if you want to use logic or mantiq regarding masla of fiqh, you have to make sure you got the fiqh masla right first, and then compute it in the system. If you're talking about nahw or sarf or balagha or logic or politics or a law, you have to make sure the law, what data you input into this argument, is it correct or not? So first thing you have to make sure is that the proposition you put into the statement, into this argument, is true or false. Well, it can't be false. It should verify that. But that's not mantiq's job. That's just a statement regarding that. Make sense? Because mantiq means that you know everything in the world. You get what I'm saying? Let's say, for example, if you say, for example, all married men are happy. But that's, mantiq can't tell you that's true, and that's psychological. That's a psychology job. All children are capable of speaking multiple languages. I don't know. But if it's true, that would mean that this is a child, so therefore it's capable of speaking multiple languages. If your proposition is true. You get what I'm saying? Okay. Alright, that's the first thing. Now, so yes. Next is the quality. What does quality mean? Is it affirmative or negative? So all my sons are lazy. That's what? Affirmative. All my sons are not lazy. This is what? Negative. So in Arabic, you call affirmative awjaba yujibu ijab. So a proposition which affirms something called mujiba. What's it called? Affirmative, mujiba, affirm something, awjab, make it wajib. And the negative is called what? Saliba. Salb, to remove, to take away. To take away the hukam. To take away the mahmud from the mawdu. So the first thing, is it true or false? Number two is what? Is it mujiba or saliba? So far so good? Yes? The third quality is a quantity. All my sons are lazy. Some of my sons are lazy. What's happening here? The quantifier is now changed. So is this proposition universal? What does universal mean? That the subject is talking about every one of that category. So wherever the subject is, wherever the mawdu is, it encompasses all of the elements. Make sense? So all footballers, all politicians, all ulama, all students, all men, all women, all anbiya, this is universal. What does universal mean? Every meaning in Arabic. Kull. So it's called kulliya. A kulliya. Meaning a proposition which refers to everything of that category. So everything that's fall under that definition, everything that's fall under the definition of son, my son, every one of those members are lazy. And if there's some, what's some mean in Arabic? Ba'd. You don't get ba'd, you get also juz. So you get here, juz'iyya. You following? So the subject can either be talking about something universal, about every member of that category, or it can be talking about something particular, just a few members of that category. Whether it's 99% or 1%, it's some. It's not all, basically. You following? So far, so good? Now, so true and false, we don't really have a discussion regarding that. Let's make sure you bring true information. The second two, the quantity and the quality, we have affirmative and negative and universal and particular. Now, what they do in Arabic, in logic, is that they call it A, E, I, O. What do you call it? There's four possibilities. Because if you have affirmative proposition, what's the opposite of affirmative? Negative. And each of them can be what? Particular, universal. So altogether you get how many? 4. Now instead of saying mujiba, saliba, juz'iyya, kulliya, keep on saying long words, they make it short. A, E, I, O. You following? The A is really from affirmo in Latin. So A is for affirmo, E is for negation, and the E and they pick the I. But you don't know Latin anyways. But remember A, E, I, and O. What does it mean? So what does A mean? It's affirmative universal, meaning, example, all
cars have tires.
All cars have tires. Well, okay, we can argue them. But that may be true or false. But all cars have tires. Yes? Or all cars have engines. That's affirmative and universal. And E? No cars have wings. So that's what universal, but it's also negative. It's A and the E. So it's easy to remember something. So in art, yes? And a particular, it's affirmative, you call it what? I. For example, some cars have spare tires, and always what? Some cars do not have spare tires. You following? So the Arabic name was affirmative. So what's what we call affirmative universal? Mujiba. Very good. Mujiba, kulliya. And this is going to call what? Saliba, kulliya. This is going to be called mujiba. Very good. Mujiba, juz'iyya. And this is going to be called saliba, juz'iyya. And basically, we're just saying here, it's A, E, I, and O, an affirmative, universal. This is very important. And learn it this way. Learn this table as this A, E, I, O. Because this table we will use a table like, okay, A goes opposite of A is O, and E and I, we do that later on. So make sure you remember A, E, I, O. Yes, this has to go this way, A, E, I, O. Yes, learn it this way, keep this in your mind. Okay? So summary, the first thing is what? The proposition can either be true or false. That's not Mantiq's job. The science has to do its own research and come to bring that information. Okay? Then the next two is what? Affirmation and negation. Affirmation and negation. Correct? Affirmative is what? Mujiba. And negative is saliba. And obviously kulliya and juz'iyya. And how do you recognize it? A, E, I, N, O. Fahimd? So far so good? Simple? Okay. Obviously, so how is it going to be useful when we come to the next, like arguments? Okay. Now the next one is it's a bit new. We need to understand this. Distribution. What does distribution mean? Distribution means that the proposition tells us something about all the members of that term. And undistributed means it doesn't tell us something about all. Distributed meaning that the information is distributed across the term. And undistributed means it's not distributed across the term.
So what's within that inside
Let's give an example here. All men are humans. Okay? If I said, what is this? Kulliya, juz'iyya, A, E, I, O. What kind of proposition is this? It's a proposition. Why? It's affirmative and kulliya. Affirmative and, you mix the two languages together. Affirmative and universal. Or in Arabic? Saliba, universaliya. Huh? What? Mujiba? Mujiba kulliya. So it's a proposition. Now when we have this one here, all men are humans, what do we learn? Like, so we have two terms. What's the two terms? The subject, so what's it say here? All, okay, let's break this sentence down. What's all? Quantifier. Men is the subject, are is the copula, and humans are predicate. So we don't need this. This doesn't really give information. This is important. It tells us it's a kulliya, and the subject. And so what do we learn about?
We just know about men.
We know about all men. We have so we have now information regarding all men. We know one thing. We know about all men. What are they? They fall under human category. So in these two, in the A proposition, what's distributed? Which is the men, which is what? Subject. So in the A proposition, what's distributed? We come to know of something about all men, or all of the subject. So whenever we have an A proposition, what happens? The subject is distributed. So we say here, this is distributed. When we have no men are lions, what's distributed in here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. We know about men and lions. Why? We know that no man is a lion, and we know that no lion is a man. So both are distributed. You cheat? No? Watching videos before? No? Yes? Good. Following? Okay. Some men are married people. We can't put anything about all men, and we don't know anything about all married people. So nothing. So this, okay, number two. What's number two? A, E, I. E. And number three? And you're going to get the point for guessing number four. An O proposition. So in here, some men, clearly that's not going to be distributed. And we don't even know about all married people because only some men are married people. So we can't say about all married people are men, all married people are not men. So we don't know anything about them. So in the I proposition, nothing is distributed. Now in the O proposition, it's a bit difficult. It's not difficult, it's a bit hard to get your head around. Some men are not married people. Huh? We know what married people. We know what all married people, amongst them some are what? Men. So it's sometimes I find it a bit hard to get my head around. I just if you go through all the very deep details. In here, this is distributed. And this is a table. So you have a subject, predicate. So basically, S, subject, predicate, get it? Subject, predicate, yes? So each of the A, E, I, O, they all of them have two parts. The subject and the predicate, yes? You got it? Yes? So in the A proposition, what's distributed? And the E? Both. In the I? Nothing. And in the O? Predicate. This is important. Because when we come up to arguments, when we come up to the deductions and all of that, we need to know well distribution. If it's not distributed, certain rules will fall in place. Do you understand? It has to, so we have to know, we have to come to your tongue which is distributed. So this is the easy way. I have S and P's. So I found this easier if you have the S. So the S of the A and the O and the P of the E and the O. Sorry, the S of the A and the E and the P of the predicate of the E and the O. These are both distributed. Yes? You understand so far? Everybody following me? So it's also important. This will help us in the deduction. The third way is arguments. Okay. Let's try a few of these here. All muhajir accompany. Muhajir, migrants, people who migrated to the Prophet ﷺ from Makkah to Medina. So, all muhajir accompany. So first thing, let's start here. What is this proposition? If it's, we're not going to say if it's true or false, because we assume it's all true. So quantity, what is it? Quantity is universal and affirmative or negative? So where is it going to be? A proposition. In the A proposition, what's going to be distributed? The muhajir. We know about all muhajir. No muhajir is a hypocrite. None of those who migrated from Makkah to Medina were hypocrites. What do we learn from this? Okay, what is it? It's an E proposition. Yes? It's an E proposition. What's distributed in the E proposition? Both. We know about all muhajir. All of the muhajir fall outside of hypocrites. And all of the hypocrites do not contain any muhajirs. We know about both of them. Some Muslims of Medina were hypocrites. Because what kind of proposition is this? It's an I proposition. So we can't make a judgment on any overall category. Some prayers are not compulsory. A-E-I-O is an O proposition. What do you know in this? What happens in here? It says not compulsory prayers. We have to say not compulsory prayers. We know about this. All Ramadan fasts are compulsory. What is this? A. So what's distributed in here? Ramadan fasts. We should say all a compulsory fast. We'll do translation as well. How to translate normal. We don't know what split, isn't it? We don't split this. We say, all I want is water. Oh my mother, all that I wish for at this time is water. But how do you convert a normal day-to-day language into propositions? Categorical propositions we call it. So these are called categorical propositions. Like they talk about all or some. Some men, we have this. Some men are married. What's that proposition? A-E-I, as an I. Because affirmative, isn't it? And some women are not mothers. Oh. What's happening in I? What's between I? Nothing. In the O? Mothers. No cars are flying objects. E. So what's it here? Both are distributed. So far so good? Okay. Right. Now this is another new one. So again, the summary of the distribution is what? Distribution means that we know about all the terms. So any proposition, so a term being distributed in a proposition. So in a proposition, whether it's a saliba kulliya, mujiba kulliya, saliba juz'iyya, mujiba juz'iyya, I don't know if I said it right, but the four terms A, E, I, O. If in those to the subject and the predicate which are distributed, means we come to know of everything regarding that one category. That's called distribution. And right now it isn't really like, why do you learn this? You have to wait for a little while up. But it keeps in the back of your mind. Once you know this, it'll come in handy in the argument section. Yes? So we have quantity, kull or juz, universal or particular. Yes? Or, and then quality, affirmative or negative. And now we're moving on to the mode. And then distribution. So distribution doesn't really refer to the proposition, it refers to the terms in the proposition. So it's really regarding the terms, but a term itself is not distributed until it comes in proposition. You get it? So this discussion really fits on the terms, but you can't say, oh, men are distributed, not distributed. When the word all men come in a sentence, then we know it's distributed. Without the all or some with it, you don't know. Okay? Okay. Next thing we have mode. The mode of the proposition. What does mode mean? They're treated as modes. One is necessary. What is what? Necessary. What does this mean? That the relationship between the subject and the predicate is necessary and is never disconnected. It can never be not this. It has necessary doesn't mean like linguistic necessary or it is necessary to come early to class. It means like it cannot be not this. It has to be this. By definition, if it's not this, it wouldn't even make sense. For example, it's called wajib in logic, in Arabic, wajib. Are you following? For example, 1 an odd number. Like, can 1 an odd number, can 1 not be an odd number? Like, by definition of 1 and definition of odd number, when we know, or we have what the word 1, or 1, uno, wahid, that concept of that unit in our minds, and the concept of odd number, whatever you call it in English, French, German, Spanish, whatever you call it, those two ideas between 1 and odd number, they're wajib. The link between them is wajib. So 1 being an odd number is wajib. It does not exist beyond this. It can't say, oh, you know what, sometimes 1 is odd, sometimes it's not 1, it's not odd. It just doesn't make sense. By definition, what we know what 1 to be, and what odd number to be, they are what? Wajib. Does that make sense? Are you following? Yeah. The opposite of that is going to be what? Not necessary, but impossible. What does impossible mean? That the subject and the predicate can't exist together. It just doesn't make sense. For example, and it's called mustahil. What's it called? Mustahil in Arabic. And mustahil means it is impossible for the subject and the predicate to come together. 1 and an even number. 1 cannot be even number. It's mustahil for 1 to be an even number. By definition, what the idea and the concept, what the idea and concept of 1 is, for it to be an even number is mustahil. Like 1 cannot remain within the framework and the concept of 1 and be an even number. It's mustahil for 1 to be even number. Yes? So 1 is an even number. That hukam, that proposition is mustahil. It's impossible. It can't happen. You follow? And the third thing is contingent. It can be, cannot be. And it's called mumkin, possible. And like triangle and isosceles. A triangle may be isosceles. It may also be what? Equilateral. It doesn't have to be isosceles. It doesn't have to be equilateral. It can be either one of them. Are you following? Does it make sense? So we have 3 Arabic terms. What are the 3 Arabic terms? Wajib. Opposite of wajib is mustahil. And between wajib and mustahil, what do we have? Mumkin. What does wajib mean in Arabic, in English? Necessary. And necessary doesn't mean it is necessary for you to wear like a black shoes. That's not what it means here. Necessarily mean that the subject and the predicate must exist together. The link between the connection, the logical connection between the mubtada and the khabar, the subject and the predicate, is irremovable. It just doesn't exist beyond this. Are you following? Yes? Then we have mustahil. What does mustahil mean? Impossible. Meaning it's not logically possible. It's not possible. We do logic later on. It's not possible for the subject and predicate to exist together. By definition, these two things, they're just contradictory. They can't exist together. You following? Then we have contingent, which is what? Mumkin, possible. It doesn't have to be such. You got it? So for example, if we look for example here. Okay, I'll do it at the end. Okay. Right. Now, so we have 3 terms. Wajib, mustahil, and mumkin. Necessary, impossible, and contingent. Yes? Okay. Now, sometimes this wajib, it has to be as such, or it can't be as such, or it's possible as such. This can be customary. For example, let's say for you got a game here, Manchester United, Manchester City. Yes? What's customary going to happen? Who's going to win? Customarily, Man City. So it's wajib for them to win. But not wajib, but for example, if we say here, they won. It's mumkin, isn't it? Yes? If I said to you, they lost. Mumkin. If I said Manchester United won 20-0. What would you say straight away? If I told you they won, what do you say? Impossible, 20-0. But it's impossible how? Is it logically impossible? It's like customer, like we don't get 20-0 in professional football. You get what I'm saying? But it's possible. Let's say, for example, one guy got injured and they got a big fight. They're going to get three or four. The maximum number of red cards, what they get suspended. Got 3 red cards or 2 red cards. Now to 9 men. One guy was injured, pulled a hamstring, had to go off. And then they just played really bad and the guy was really angry. And the goalkeeper, I don't know, had a howl or something. And they lost 20-0. It's possible, isn't it? It's possible, isn't it? But you say it's impossible customarily. If I tell you, for example, oh, guess what? England played India and England scored 650 runs in 50 overs. So that's impossible. Like, but how is it impossible? It's possible, isn't it? It's possible. Customarily, urf, ada, general customs. Yes, so one batsman scored 1,000 runs in a test match. That's a record score. Like 1,000, how did he score that? Yeah, he hit like, I don't know. It's possible, isn't it? But it's like, it's possible, like, logically, but how can he score 1,000 runs? Like, it's possible if, like, he batted every over in a day and he scored 10 runs. He faced 3 balls in a day in each over and he scored 2 boundaries and a dot ball. So 10 runs in over in 1 day is how many? In 90 runs, 900 runs in a day, innit? No? It's possible, isn't it? I'm saying that far-fetched nowadays, but we get the idea. Customary, one person doesn't score 1,000 runs in Test cricket. But it's possible. But customary is impossible. So when we use the word impossible or mustahil, one way is customarily or what we're accustomed to. The second is scientifically. That the rules that so this is where now we get a bit here with atheism and modernism. That what we say here is scientifically things are mumkin, wajib and mustahil. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set down a system, a taqdeer. And for us, because He wants us to survive, like if everything was random, like we can't fly a plane, can we? Because we say, well, sometimes the pressure works and it doesn't work. Like we have brakes, or sometimes the brakes doesn't hold, like the grip, the grip on the side behind the brakes in a car, it works and it doesn't work. How can you drive a car? How can we cook food if fire doesn't? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has set rules. He created the world, and in this world He created a taqdeer, a system. And in this system, everything goes according to the system. This is what we call science. And we're just discovering these rules that Allah have set. And the more we discover, the more we're able to do it. Like Formula 1 cars, you can say, well, we can push it to the limit because we know gravity works like this, air pressure works like this, rubber degrades like this, an airplane, a fighter jet, chemicals, medicine, we know how body reacts. So all of these things that Allah has created in the humans, this is the way Allah has created things. You following? And because we know how these things work, that's why we can work with them. If they're all random, like example, like psychology, like it's just, human beings we can never figure out human beings, innit? Like for example, if you boil water, so scientifically, it is wajib, innit? For water to boil at 100 degrees, innit? That is Allah's way. God has created a system where everything boils at 100 degrees. This is wajib, that water has to boil at 100 degrees scientifically and according to how Allah has made it. So far, so good? And it's impossible for water to boil below 100 degrees. This is scientific impossible, mustahil, and yes. And then we have mumkin, biological mumkin. For example, a woman may have a child, may not have a child. It's not wajib she has a child. It's not mustahil she has a child. Like, you get it? So scientific or biological, okay, sometimes biological, it can happen both ways. So you have scientific wajib, scientific mumkin, scientific mustahil. You get what I'm trying to say? So these are different mumkin, mustahil. You understand? Are you following? And there's also one called here, rational mumkin, rational mustahil. Are you following? What does this mean? For example, a square triangle. Can you have a square triangle? Like, now what's the difference? In customary mustahil, let's go mustahil, impossible things. In customary, it's like before, for example, like things go, like for example, we say, it's like 100 years ago, it's impossible for a person to hear a voice from one place to 200 miles away. But now we can have WhatsApp, pick up the phone, Saudi Arabia, Makkah, Medina, Brazil, Argentina, anywhere on the phone, and everybody comes together on one screen. So customary mustahil is just what we're accustomed to, and our world keeps on changing. Scientific mustahil is a fixed system that Allah has put in place. Are you following? But we could reimagine. Let's take God out of the equation for now. We could reimagine that this is scientific. Let's say, for example, when Allah created the world, did it have to be that water was 100 degrees? If Allah wanted, He could make it 105 degrees, or 90 degrees, or 10 degrees. It didn't have to be as such. That was Allah's way of making things, and we're just discovering these ways. Yes? And rational is like, these are like illogical by definition. Like what a square means something has 4 equal sides. And a circle means it doesn't have any edges. So these two things is just not, like, these two things don't exist together. Rationally. Like you can't have contradictory things together. You can't say, okay, living and dead, like in the same, like biological, not talking about physical or metaphysical or spiritual. Physical life and physical death, they're contradictory, innit? So you can't say living dead. You mean like, okay, in the movies or the book, what do you have? Living dead means what? They come up from the grave and have a life again. So even then you said life and dead. So but when you say biological life and biological death, These are two contradictory things. Even number, odd number. Like square, triangle, like all these are contradictory rationally. They can't come together. You following so far? So customary mustahil and scientific mustahil, impossible things. Right? Now that we understood this, obviously it's going a bit digressing from mantiq. We could just stop here. This is mantiq is finished, logic is finished. But because this question comes up a lot, like people in school ask, okay, if God, these come really stupid questions, but if God is omnipotent, what's omnipotent mean? He has power over everything. So if God is powerful over everything, then they have can he, and they have all these questions. Let me explain it. Can he create another God? That's one question I'm asking it. If God is omnipotent, he can do anything, can he create another God? That people can be confused, it's a bit confusing. It's very simple. Because why? By definition, what is God? For something to be a God, God is not an idol, isn't it? If you can God create an idol, there's loads of idols in the world. People make idols. What is a real essence? What is God meaning? God has certain qualities. He's what? Eternal. He's all his knowledge. He's uncreated. That's essential. That's like the same as a triangle. Can only be a triangle has three sides. A God is only a God. God who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's only a God when he has this essence. If it's not this, like if you remove one side of a triangle and add another side, the essence that's no longer a triangle. So by definition, God, Allah subhanahu Allah, what is he? Uncreated being. So basically when you said, if God is omnipotent, can he create another? So God is uncreated. So basically saying, can God create uncreated? That's basically a question, isn't it? Do you get what's happening? So that question itself is rationally, is a bogus question. But the way the question is phrased, we get confused. And this question has been answered like centuries ago in the books of Aqidah and Tafsir has been answered. But they keep on bringing it. I don't know if it happens in school. They ask this they ask this sometimes in nothing, in RE and that kind of stuff. If God is omnipotent, can he create another God? So it's like this question is not correct. Question is illogical. Similarly, if God is omnipotent, can he create a God he cannot lift? No, sorry, create a stone he cannot lift. Like a big stone he can't lift it. Again, this question doesn't make sense because by definition, it's basically, can you have a square triangle? Why? Because by definition, omnipotent means what? To be all powerful. And he cannot meaning, not omnipotent, not qadir. So you're basically saying, can a living be dead? So if you're saying, because what is the definition of God? Well, not definition, but you can't really define him. But one of the essences of what we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he's an uncreated being. He's forever, he will never come to an end. He always has power. So if you're saying, can he create something he cannot do? What are you saying? Can a person who is by definition all powerful be non-powerful? Do you get it? So this question can't be answered because the question itself is contradictory. Do you understand? Does it make sense? So what we're saying is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power over everything, he has power over every customary thing, and he has also power over every scientific thing. And rationality doesn't have to be power. We can't have power over irrational things. It's like, can you smell? How does red smell? That red and smell, they don't go together. Do you understand? There's like how hot I don't know. How hot is blue? How hot is a gigabyte? A gigabyte doesn't go with Celsius. The question is irrational because these things are not linked together. So qudra and having omnipotent power doesn't link with things that are irrational. It doesn't make sense. So the question itself is flawed. So there's no answer to this question because the question itself is flawed. Make sense? Okay. So far so good? Now whilst we're looking at modes, and we're looking at wajib, mumkin, mustahil, there's also another one. What about miracles? You get what I'm saying? A miracle is like people a miracle is irrational. Let me ask you a question here. Can Chris Gayle hit a ball for 8? Has he ever hit a ball for 8? Why not? It's rationally impossible. Has Stephen Curry ever scored 5 points in a single shot without being fouled? A 5-pointer? Why? Why is it not possible? Why does it not exist? 5 points doesn't exist. Is there you can hit a ball for 8? Is there 8? I don't know, 4, 6, 8, I don't know what you can have. Is there ever 8? That's wide. Huh? Is there anything? But is it not possible that before cricket was invented, or the rules are let's say for example they say, you know what, let's rewrite the rules. If you hit a ball more than 100 meters, it becomes an 8. Cannot rewrite the rules. Because they have the authority. They created the game in the ICs, but they don't create the game, but they run the game in it. So is it not possible that it's like, okay, we're going to change the rules and we're going to say there's an 8 now. So if you hit a 6 followed by another 6, it becomes an 8. That's a bonus, so it makes it more fun. If you hit a 6 followed by another 6, it becomes a 10. So 2 in a row becomes a 10. They can do that, innit, can't they? So they can change. So they are the ones who govern these rules. You get what I'm saying? They're not, it's the ICC or the Cricket Council, they're not governed by what? The rules. They make the rules. Similarly, if the NBA decided we're going to make a 5-point line, if you shoot behind the halfway line, we call it a 5-point. They've changed the rules now. They're not bound by them, they've made the rules. You following? Similarly here, we have this. This is how animals run. So we have the snail, we have Usain Bolt, we have a falcon 200 miles per hour. I don't know if that's true. I've seen it 2-3 places, but I haven't got time to say it. I said 200 miles an hour, that's true. So 200 miles an hour. Now, when it dies from height. Interesting. Now, Allah has made this. So the same way that ICC made the rules, this is a 4, this is a 6. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created these animals to run at the... Is it not possible if Allah wanted to, He could have created the same strength in the horse in Usain Bolt, turn at 45 miles an hour. If Allah wanted to, no, any human being, if He wanted to, could He not have created the strength of a cheetah in a human being? Like, let's say for example, let's restart the whole world. I want to make it that humans run at 1,000 miles an hour. Why can't that happen? You get what I'm saying? He made the rules. So the IC said any ball that goes along the ground to the boundary is 4. Any ball that goes above the boundary is a 6. And that's how it is. But if I want, but in the 500 game, the 500 or the 1,000 test one-day match, the rule is going to be suspended. Every ball on the floor will be at 8, and every ball over the boundary will be at 12. They can do that and suspend the rule for one game, can't they? Because they govern the rules. So what we say here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's qadir, He has power over everything. Science doesn't govern Him. He created this, well, not even science, but He created the rules of what we call science. He created the rules of nature. And for us to function normally, these rules function in a standard way so we know how to cook. If, for example, then, what? If chicken, one time it cooked at 100 degrees, I want to get 40 degrees, I'll have an excuse every time the barbecue is raw, it's not my fault. And it keeps on changing barbecue, how you cook the temperature, cooking temperature of chicken. But we know that at 70 or 84 degrees Celsius, the barbecue will be ready. Yes? But is it not possible that, obviously to function, the world to function, it will always be ready at 84 degrees or 80 degrees. But what if Allah said, it doesn't get to that temperature, you put it in a fire, nothing happens to it. Is it not possible logically that it can happen rationally? You get what I'm trying to say? So scientific laws are there which apply 99.99999% of the time so that Allah has created the world. So we know that, okay, this is how we know how to behave in the world, how to apply our cooking, our science, our cars, our animals, and our everything. But because He has created each individual system, how gravity functions, like gravity. It's not that gravity is not wajib. So according to scientists, what is gravity? According to, in our eyes, is what? It's mumkin. Get what I'm saying? Gravity is not necessary. Scientific is necessary. That every single, throughout history, every single thing, gravity is this. So the scientists say, well, we've observed enough times that gravity exists, so therefore gravity is wajib. But we say, so aqidatan, in belief, we say, gravity is not wajib, it's mumkin. But Allah's taqdeer is such that He puts it in this way every single time, every single second, every single drop, every single item is created gravity, but it's mumkin. Therefore, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasulihil Kareem. So yesterday the batteries went dead. So just to continue, what we're saying is, regarding science and rationality, what we're saying is that we're not rational saying that we don't believe in science. What we're saying here is that science or the natural laws, so it's two differences, two things. We all agree that these things occur. But as a believer, what do we say? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the mu'athir in every single action. Do you understand? And the deistic, the atheists or those who have deistic belief in God, is that Allah created the world, or there is no God, or this is science by itself, or God created the world and He set it in motion, now He has no part to play. And now everything happens by itself because of the rules He set. And we say, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who created every single thing. So gravity, we believe in gravity, we believe in science, we believe in whatever, everything that we've discovered how Allah's system works. All of that fine. The only difference is that we say that these things don't happen wajib, they're not necessary. It just so happens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this decree that He makes it happen all the time. And Each time we get something and we drop it, it will drop at a certain speed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He causes it to drop at a certain speed. Yes? That's our, and the others who don't believe in Allah, they said, these are necessary, that this has to happen. So what's the difference? What's the difference now? Where does it have a difference?
Allah can make it stop.
Exactly, Allah can make it stop. So therefore, if we don't believe in any, so if therefore, from a sound source, we get information that this rule was suspended, Allah did not choose to have this rule apply at a certain time, we believe it if it's an authentic source. So if you get all these stories out, who said it, we don't know who said it, but if we have something in the Quran, something authentic, hadith, mutawatir, of this level, we say, well, it's not irrational to believe in this. Because we believe that Allah is causing it each and every time, and this time He didn't cause it. Do you understand? It's like, for example, like when you go to school from the age of 4 to 16, every morning you get lunch, don't you? You got lunch, innit? You got lunch, you get lunch, don't you? But was it wajib to receive lunch from your mother? Was it jaiz? Was it necessary or was it contingent? It was contingent, but just so happened that mom decided that every morning I will do. If one day you didn't get breakfast, is that conceivable? It's conceivable. But similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a system where He says every single time these things happen, this is how it will behave. Water, 100 degrees will boil. But if Allah so wishes, it doesn't happen. That's possible. It's 100% rational. You understand? Okay. So for example, we have here فَالْتَقَمَهُ الْهُوتُ وَهُوَ مُلِيمٌ. That Sayyidina Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam, he set off and he says فَالْتَقَمَهُ الْهُوتُ. Hoot, the fish, probably a whale or a large fish. Iltaqama made a luqma of him, made a morsel of him. Yes? And we believe this because we believe in the Quran. And we have no doubt in the Quran being the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed via Jibreel to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now we say here, we don't have to look for scientific facts. Well, is it possible? Could it survive in the acids of the stomach of the whale? Well, even if it's scientifically impossible, scientifically impossible doesn't mean it's wajib, it has to happen. A scientist will believe that no, it has to happen. There's no other way but for this to happen. Because well, no, this consists. Allah did not have this rule, did not cause it this time. Are you following me? So even if scientifically it's proven that it's impossible for a human being to survive in the weight of a stomach, it's okay. That's what Allah does 99.99999% of the times. But what is one time Allah did not choose to make that action come about. Therefore, there's no harm in believing, even if it's scientifically possible. Because they only believe in empirical evidence. You understand? You get it? Now, how long did He say? Now, see, you have to differentiate now. How long did He say in this? Some say 40 days, some say 1 week, some say a few hours. Now, what we should do is, we should have such firm belief that whatever the Prophet ﷺ said, whatever the truth, if it's 40 years, we would believe it. There's no direction 40 years, but if it was. So we shouldn't try to pick a tafsir which makes it more easy, more palatable for us. That this few hours tafsir is a bit more, you get what I'm trying to say? If that's more authentic in terms of chain, that's fine. You understand? But don't try to do it, because we're saying like, this is beyond, and it's not irrational, it's this being that Allah did not. You get very simple if you understand that every time it happens, Allah is causing it. He didn't cause it to happen. Yes?